In a quiet lakeside community, a self-appointed HOA enforcer demanded a black man remove his boat from her lake, oblivious to the fact that he not only owned the lake but held the power to dismantle her exclusive fishing club entirely. Marcus Ellison had lived in Willow Creek for 3 years, a serene lakeside community in upstate New York where the water shimmered under the summer sun and the air carried the faint scent of pine. He was a private man, mid-40s, with a calm demeanor and a knack for keeping to himself. His lakeside property, a sprawling estate at the edge of Willow Lake, was his sanctuary. Marcus, a successful real estate developer, had purchased the land and the lake itself in a quiet transaction few in the community knew about. The lake, a pristine 200-acre body of water, was the heart of Willow Creek, drawing anglers, boaters, and families to its shores. Marcus didn't advertise his ownership. He didn't need to. He enjoyed the peace, the occasional boat ride, and the solitude of his home. The Willow Creek Homeowners Association, however, was anything but peaceful. Led unofficially by Karen Whitaker, a woman in her late 50s with a penchant for control, the HOA governed the neighborhood with an iron grip. Karen was the kind of person who measured lawn heights with a ruler, sent stern letters about unapproved mailbox colors, and patrolled the community like a sheriff in a western. Her latest obsession was the lake, which she treated as her personal domain. The Willow Creek Fishing Club, a tight-knit group of mostly older residents, had been using the lake for years, hosting tournaments, barbecues, and exclusive gatherings. Karen was the club's de facto leader, organizing events and enforcing rules about who could fish, when, and how. Marcus, for his part, had never joined the fishing club. He wasn't much for group activities, preferring to take his small motorboat out at dawn or dusk, when the lake was quiet. His boat, a modest 18-foot vessel, was moored at a private dock on his property. It was unobtrusive, well-maintained, and within his rights to keep there. But to Karen, it was an eyesore, a violation of what she called the aesthetic standards of Willow Lake. She didn't know Marcus owned the lake, and she didn't care to ask. To her, he was just another resident who needed to fall in line. It started on a humid July morning. Marcus was sipping coffee on his porch, watching the mist rise off the lake, when Karen's golf cart hummed into view. She wore her usual uniform, a visor, khaki shorts, and a clipboard clutched like a weapon. Her lips were pursed, her eyes scanning his property for infractions. Marcus had dealt with her before, petty complaints about his fence height or the shade of his shutters, but he'd always handled it with a nod and a promise to look into it. This time, though, Karen had a new target, his boat. "Mr. Ellison," she began, her tone clipped, "that boat of yours is an issue. It's not in keeping with the community's standards. The fishing club has rules about docking, and you're not even a member. You need to move it by the end of the week." Marcus set his coffee down, his expression unreadable. "Good morning, Karen. The boat's on my property. It's not bothering anyone." Karen bristled. "It's not about your property. It's about the lake. We have an image to maintain. That boat is too visible. It's not the kind we allow out there. You're not part of the club, so you shouldn't be docking anything." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "The lake's private property, Karen. I'm within my rights." She scoffed, flipping through her clipboard. "Private property or not, the HOA has jurisdiction over lake usage. The fishing club's been here for decades. We decide what's appropriate. If you don't move it, we'll fine you. Or tow it." Marcus leaned back, his voice calm but firm. "You might want to check the property records before you start towing anything." Karen's face reddened. She wasn't used to pushback. "I don't need to check anything. I've been running this community for years. I know the rules. You'll hear from the board." With that, she spun her golf cart around and sped off, leaving a trail of dust. Marcus shook his head, returning to his coffee. He wasn't one for confrontations, but Karen's entitlement grated on him. He'd moved to Willow Creek for peace, not to be lectured about his own lake. Still, he let it go, assuming she'd cool off or move on to her next target. He was wrong. The next day, a letter arrived from the HOA, typed in aggressive bold font, citing violations of lake usage and demanding the boat's removal within 48 hours. It threatened fines and further action if he didn't comply. Marcus read it, folded it neatly, and tucked it into a drawer. He wasn't worried about fines. His ownership of the lake gave him leverage, but the letter was a step too far. Karen wasn't just meddling, she was trying to bully him. Word spread quickly through Willow Creek. The fishing club, egged on by Karen, began whispering about Marcus. At their next meeting, held at the community clubhouse, Karen stood at the front, rallying her troops. "He's disrespecting our traditions," she declared, her voice carrying over the murmurs of agreement. "That boat is a symbol of his arrogance. We've kept this lake pristine for years. We can't let outsiders come in and ruin it." The club members nodded, though some shifted uncomfortably. Marcus wasn't exactly an outsider. He'd lived there for years, paid his dues, and kept his property immaculate, but Karen's narrative was taking hold. A few members, loyal to her, began patrolling the lake, snapping photos of Marcus's boat and muttering about standards. One even suggested confronting him directly, but cooler heads prevailed. For now. Marcus, meanwhile, decided to dig into the HOA's rules. He pulled the community bylaws, a dense document most residents never read, and confirmed what he already knew: the HOA had no jurisdiction over the lake. It was his property, deeded to him when he bought the estate. The fishing club's access was a courtesy, not a right. Decades ago, the previous owner had allowed residents to use the lake informally, and the tradition had continued. But legally, Marcus could shut it down whenever he wanted. He didn't want to. He liked seeing kids fishing off the public dock, families kayaking, and even the fishing club's tournaments, as annoying as their exclusivity could be. But Karen's campaign was forcing his hand. The next week, another letter arrived, this time threatening legal action. Marcus decided it was time to act. He called his lawyer, Sarah Gwynn, a sharp attorney who'd handled his real estate deals for years. "Sarah," he said, "I need you to draft something. The HOA's overstepping, and I want to make it clear who owns the lake." Sarah chuckled. "You've been patient, Marcus. Let's remind them how property law works." 2 days later, at the HOA's monthly board meeting, Karen was in her element, railing about Marcus's non-compliance to a room of nodding neighbors. She'd rallied enough support to propose a vote on escalating fines. That's when Marcus walked in, carrying a manila folder. The room fell silent. He wasn't a regular at these meetings, and his presence felt like a storm cloud rolling in. "Evening," Marcus said, taking a seat near the back. Karen's eyes narrowed, but she pressed on, reading her motion to fine him $500 a week until the boat was removed. When she finished, Marcus stood. "Before you vote, I'd like to clarify something." He opened the folder and held up a document. "This is the deed to Willow Lake. My name's on it. I own the lake, the shoreline on my property, and the dock where my boat's moored. The HOA has no authority over any of it." A murmur rippled through the room. Karen laughed, a sharp, disbelieving sound. "That's ridiculous. The lake belongs to the community. It's always been that way." Marcus handed the deed to the board president, a retired accountant named Tom Reynolds, who scanned it carefully. His face paled. "This looks legitimate," he said, passing it to another board member. "It's not just legitimate," Marcus continued. "It's ironclad. Your bylaws don't mention the lake because it's private property. The fishing club's been using it with my permission, or rather, my lack of objection. But if you're going to threaten me over my own boat, I might reconsider that permission." Karen's mouth opened, then closed. She wasn't used to being challenged, let alone outmaneuvered. "This is outrageous," she sputtered. "You can't just claim the lake." "I'm not claiming it," Marcus said evenly. "I bought it 3 years ago. You can check the county records." The room erupted in whispers. Some residents looked embarrassed, others angry. A few, who'd never liked Karen's heavy-handed tactics, hid smirks. Tom, trying to restore order, called for a recess to verify the deed. By the next morning, the county clerk's office confirmed Marcus's ownership. The lake was his. Karen didn't back down. At the fishing club's next meeting, she doubled down, insisting they could fight Marcus in court. "He's bluffing," she told the group. "No one person can own a lake. We'll sue for community access. It's our right." But it wasn't. Sarah, Marcus's lawyer, sent a cease and desist letter to the HOA, outlining the legal reality. The lake was private property, and Marcus could restrict access at any time. The letter also noted that the fishing club's activities, docks, tournaments, even their annual barbecue, were technically trespassing unless Marcus allowed it. The club's members began to fracture. Some, loyal to Karen, wanted to fight. Others, realizing the legal battle was unwinnable, urged her to negotiate. Marcus, meanwhile, stayed calm. He didn't want to evict anyone, but he wasn't going to be bullied on his own property. He gave the club an ultimatum: apologize, drop the demands about his boat, and agree to reasonable lake usage rules, or he'd revoke their access entirely. Karen refused. She organized a protest, rallying a dozen club members to fish defiantly from the public dock, waving signs about community rights. Marcus watched from his porch, shaking his head. He didn't want it to come to this, but Karen's stubbornness left him no choice. On a crisp September morning, Marcus's lawyer delivered a notice to the HOA and the fishing club. Their lake access was terminated, effective immediately. The club's docks, built without permits on his property, were to be removed within 30 days. Any further use of the lake without permission would be considered trespassing, with legal consequences. The fallout was swift. The fishing club, without its main attraction, collapsed. Karen's influence crumbled as members blamed her for escalating the conflict. Some tried to apologize to Marcus, but he was done with half measures. He allowed limited public access for families and kids but banned organized groups until they could prove they'd respect his rights. Karen moved away 6 months later, her reputation in Willow Creek tarnished. Marcus kept his boat on the lake, taking it out at dawn, gliding across the water he owned. The community learned a lesson about assumptions and power, and Marcus, ever private, went back to his quiet life, the lake shimmering under his watchful eye.